What's going on, everyone? Cameron Powell up here at LIS Audio, and as my friends and a lot of my clients call me, Chimpo. I've got a little experiment that I'm working on. I kind of want to show the differences between different materials that are used in vehicles for putting in aftermarket speakers. I give a lot of advice online in different groups on pages, things like that, kind of just helping people get better acquainted with what professional shops will do in their vehicles to get things done, what other shops may do, and then what they can do themselves if they want to DIY. So one thing that I come across quite often is what material to make your speaker ring from. A lot of speakers don't fit directly into a vehicle existing hole, or sometimes you have to remove the actual speaker plate with the factory speaker, so then you have to add an aftermarket plate that adjusts to that new opening and then fits the new speaker into it. So what we'll do is we're going to break down in this video just the small differences between each of them, and then I'll go through the experiment and show you exactly what we're going to do to show the qualities of each of these materials. Alright, so the main focus of this experiment is going to be what moisture is going to do to these materials for a long period of time. I've used the digital caliper to measure each one of these rings and figure out exactly how thick each of them are prior to submerging them into the water. And then we're going to use our stopwatch so that we know exactly how long we put them in there. I'm not going to set a timer on it. I'm just going to go away for a few hours, come back, and then I'm going to pull it out, stop the stopwatch, and at least I know how long that these were actually in there in case we want to add another variable later. We can go with the same amount of time that we did previously. Then we're going to submerge them in this bucket of just water. There's nothing added to it, and then there's enough water in here in order to fully submerge every one of these rings. So we'll go ahead and get into that, and then after the prolonged period of time of them being submerged, we'll come back, pull them out. We're going to let them sit for another long period of time just to kind of see what the moisture does to them as it's trying to pull itself out. And then at that point we'll take our measurements and we're going to we're going to review what exactly has happened and what has not happened. Okay, so through my career in car audio, there are a few different ways that people will make their speaker rings. Your most commonly found is going to be MDF. So just cutting out a small piece of wood and then to your shape, which it's not always just going to be a circle. Sometimes it'll have different shape as well. And then there's going to be painted MDF. So it's essentially MDF, but you just add some paint to it, maybe filler, primer, something like that. Or what we tend to use is just some cheap black paint if we just are going to throw something in we know that we're going to be really good with the environments on the inside of the vehicle door. Now, these are really inexpensive, super quick and easy routes to go, but not the most beneficial. The reason you would not want to necessarily do just straight up MDF is because it's very porous and it'll absorb moisture. So what we'll do is we'll fill our pores in with our paint, and that'll A, color it so that if anyone looks through the factory grill, you're not going to just see wood in there, and then B, it helps fill in a lot of that porous, a lot of those pores. Essentially it absorbs the paint into the pores as opposed to absorbing the water into the pores as easily. So we'll also add a little bit of a weather guard behind our speaker so that no water directly gets onto our ring or our speaker. So a lot of times this is a decent way to go, depending, but we're going to do this experiment to see the differences in the rest of them versus just the generic basic ways. This, we have a little bit of ABS plastic, so it's about the same thickness as everything else. This is going to be super simple. I don't expect this to expand or to warp or do anything. This is going to be the most reliable way to go. We've got some marine grade wood. So this is basically treated and meant to be used on exterior homes or out on boats, things like that. That's what this is for, to where it can absorb moisture, or it keeps some of that moisture locked out. It uses it to totally different than what MDF will do, or most any other type of just dry wood like that that's not treated necessarily. Then we've got just some MDF, which is going to be fiberglass. So this is one that we'll hear a lot, is just, do a fiberglass ring, or sorry, do a MDF ring and then add some fiberglass resin to it, and that'll seal all those pores up as well and keep it nice and tidy from the elements. So we're going to try that out. Then we've got an MDF ring that's actually been coated with bed inert. So just some like really good truck bed material or coating is what we've added to this one. So it's completely sealed. We're going to see if any of these guys are going to warp or absorb the moisture that we place them in for a long period of time. Now, a lot of what we're doing here is going to be really relative to a lot of the blogs that we have written up. There's properly installing your speakers. Then we have putting hush mat in your doors. I would say definitely go read those blogs. We have our lisaudioblog.com, which is got a lot of vehicle features on our clients and builds that we've done, and it's also got a lot of things of details on how we do some of the work that we do and why we do it the way we do it. So I would say definitely go check that stuff out. There's a lot of things I'm kind of skipping over that's going to be relative to these, but if you read those blogs and then read the one that I'm also going to write up on this entire experiment, then we'll get all of the full scope of most of those details put into one place. So make sure you check that out as well. Get started. Then once all of this has been setting for a while, come back, pull it out, kind of just take a small review of what's went on. Then we'll go through what's actually happened after they've dried off and had time for that moisture to somewhat evaporate and come out of the whatever rings that it might need to. All right, so stopwatch set to 0. Let's throw these suckers in. Got some floaters. Stopwatch is a go. Come on. Well, I guess they're just gonna be floaters. Maybe I can find something just to hold them down, so they're all just submerged. Alright, so all I'm doing here is I've put a little bit of water in another plastic container, and I'm just gonna add it to the top of all these rings, so that way it just keeps them all underwater for the same amount of time. Let's even this out a bit. Looks like the Olympic rings logo almost. So let's go over our results for our experiment. Basically, everything that has wood swelled. The plastic ABS is the only thing that obviously wasn't going to swell up or change due to longevity of introduction of moisture. I predicted a lot of these were going to have somewhat of a change. I was a little surprised probably by these two more than anything. They swelled up to be a little bigger than I expected them to be. So let's see, most we've got here, painted MDF. This one gave us the most swell of 0.08 of an inch. It's actually probably that surprised me the most. I thought that this one would be wouldn't swell as much as this, which the MDF itself swelled to 0.05 in that part of an inch, and it's actually, the painted is thicker now than the raw MDMF is. So that surprised me. I thought maybe the raw would actually be a little thicker than this. And then we ended up letting these all sit in the water for about 26 hours. So they all submerged for about 26 hours, then pulled them out, let them dry through the day, and then kind of just still have a little bit of moisture in them. You can tell this one has actually developed some kind of a texture to it, because it's almost like as the MDF was absorbing the water and it started to push apart, all the particles themselves are kind of starting to swell just individually. This one has a bit of a texture. You can see it has a bow to it as well. It's almost got a warp. It still lays a little flat This one lays a little flat. We did have some warping coming through on our marine grade, and this did swell as well. You can feel it. It's almost kind of soft too, but we know that once a lot of that evaporates, this will still just get back to close to its original form, and it's not going to warp as much as the rest of these will, being introduced to water as often. Then, let's see, this one, our marine swelled up 0.05, and that's within an inch. So then we've got our coated, so the speaker coating that we put on here, this one actually started to crack apart. You can see it's almost like it's plying a piece, like plying apart into different sections almost. But this swelled up. This one swelled up 0.07, and then most of these are starting off close to ½ of an inch. So it's not an unbearable amount to where like you can see a magnificent difference, but you can definitely tell when you put it next to another piece of ½ inch wood that's still a ½ inch. Then we've got, let's see, our fiberglass resin is going to be 0.03. So that's going to be our lowest swell on the whole thing, just right under, of course, without plastic in the mix, just right under the NBF. So it seems like the NBF itself, when you don't coat it, it almost absorbs that moisture and then lets it out faster. So then it's like these are probably still holding quite a bit more moisture in than this is. So that's probably why it's not so swelled up. Didn't test it, I didn't measure it right when I pulled it out of the water. Probably would have been something I could have done, and that would kind of let us know if that variable is true or not, or that hypothesis is true. But essentially, this lets us know overall we're plastic. You want to use ABS. None of these seem to be 100% good material to use in your doors to withstand environment. So say ABS, these are all temporary kind of forms, which we've always discuss with our clients. We tell them this is like our, if we go either of these routes, they're not going to be as expensive as this, but they will be cost effective, and most of the time they're going to last quite a bit of time with you and your vehicle and the system that we put in. Plus, adding hush mat and protecting all of these variables from the outside environment is actually going to help quite a bit more than obviously submerging. You're not going to have any of these just submerged in a door cavity at any point in time, or else we'd be putting marine grade speakers in every single car. So mostly this just kind of shows what moisture can do to these different materials, just over prolonged periods of time, but it's not necessarily saying that if you put these in your car, everything's going to go this direction. There are a lot of other variables, like I said, putting in hush mat and things like that, creating weather guards to make sure that these aren't getting direct contact with moisture. A lot of those other things will help, go against those extra outside environmental variables. So that's the breakdown. Make sure you check out the blog. I'm going to write a blog up on this so that all the details are in there in one place. Check out our other blogs as well, like I had mentioned. There's the ones on Deadner, get a little more information on that. Then there's also our blog that's coming out on speaker installation, which is going to be directly related to this. And thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you guys are liking our page, subscribing to our YouTube channel. There's always more videos coming out, and we're always trying to bring you guys a little more knowledge, just so you know what you're getting yourselves into when it goes to getting a full system in your vehicle, and starting to understand more of the details to it than just thinking you can roll into a shop and they just slap everything in. This way you can kind of see what different shops do, and you can go out there and ask them and say, hey, what do you use to put speakers in? Or what kind of wire do you guys use? Or where do you mount your amplifier traditionally? And we'll prepare you with all of this knowledge so that when you go in, you know exactly what you're talking about and what you're looking for a quality shop. All right, guys. Well, thanks again. I'll see you next time.